She is filling in for Amy today and helping us out. And so she's our host from the library. So a big thank you to her. You guys can see her on the screen. Uh, so today we are making, as Melissa mentioned, we're making focaccia. And I actually had to look up how to pronounce it because I think all these years I've pronounced it focaccia with the sh sound, not the k sound. So it's focaccia. Now I'm going to say it wrong. Focaccia, like a ch sound.
Yeah. Elayne, do you mind,
Yep.
excuse me for interrupting, but my parents are from Italy, so I know a little bit about focaccia. But the reason that it's the CI in an Italian name is pronounced like cha because there is no H in the Italian alphabet. So that's how they make the cha sound, is CI.
Ah,
There you go.
I is their H sound, and they don't have an H in their alphabet. Oh my goodness.
Right. So it's not the H sound, but it makes it the cha because there is no H. So that's how they make the ch sound. Yeah.
Love that. Thank you, Patty, for sharing that. That's fantastic.
You're welcome.
Gotcha. So now everyone's going to be saying that. I just see that Camille said that last week's spread was so good. I'm so glad you tried it. I know a few of you sent in some pictures of it, and you guys had good success and said how tasty it was. And weren't you just shocked at how simple it was? I mean, it's the craziest thing. I hope you guys had fun with that last week. And the reason why I chose focaccia is because it kind of builds on last week. Last week was a no-knead bread, and this week is a kneaded bread, a lightly kneaded bread. And so before we actually start with the recipe, I have to give a couple of shout outs. So Green, I believe, was the one who told us about roasted cinnamon.
Yep.
Well, finally, it was on back order. She shared with us, I think it was the very first class we had, that she loves roasted cinnamon. And she said she gets it at Walmart. And so I put my order in. I've been waiting for it. Well, I finally got it.
Oh, good.
The smell is to die for.
Yep.
So different than a typical cinnamon. I don't know what it is. Mine never smells like this when I just roast the cinnamon sticks, but thank you so much. I'm so excited. And so I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you
for sharing that. So if anyone else is looking for something fun, a new spice to try, this is roasted Saigon cinnamon. And then last week, after we finished, I think during class, one of our participants had mentioned that she uses a Danish dough whisk. And so after class, I reached out to her and I said, where did you get which one did you use? Which brand? I'd like to try it. And so she sent it to me and I got it in the mail. And you guys, I'm going to use it in today's class because I fell in love with it. And, you know, I have to tell you guys this. I know I should be doing the recipe right now, but it actually made me teary-eyed because the reason why these are called share classes is because we share, and we share for the sake of sharing. There's no angle. No one's trying to sell anything to each other. We're just here as a community to help lift each other up. And so as I was trying this dough hook out, it literally brought tears to my eyes because it's the sole purpose for the word share in this mission of sharing life, love, and food. And so I just want to thank Tina for sharing this, and we're going to use this today. Tina can probably share that again with everyone, what she ordered, and the one I ordered, it was $10, I think, off Amazon. If she's on today, she can certainly share that in the chat. And speaking of the chat, why don't I go ahead and share today's recipe? Melissa shared the link to all the prior videos. Thanks for doing that, Melissa. Yeah, someone had asked about, is the recipe for last week? So yeah, the library has been crazy kind to put all the videos, all the recipes from all the prior classes up on a site. And so you guys have access to that. If you need to watch it again for a refresher, you want to pass it on to family and friends, feel free. Okay, and so you guys now have the link to the recipe. So let's get going here. And we will be using this Danish whisk here. Okay, so focaccia is very similar to pizza dough. The only real difference is that you use more yeast when you're making focaccia because you want it to be pillowy. So we're going to start off with, you know, a lot of people refer to packets of yeast, which are equal to 2 teaspoons and 1/4 of a teaspoon. So that's what we're using. It's 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. And then we're going to use 1/4 of a cup of sugar. I like this recipe. It's easy to remember. So 1/4 of a cup of sugar, and then 1/4 of a cup of olive oil. Just going to add that into a bowl. And then we are going to take some warm water, and we're using 1.5 cups of warm water. And I showed you guys last week, I do the finger test. You know, we mentioned last week that it's really important when you're working with yeast that your water isn't too hot, because if you've ever found it not rising, your dough rising properly, it's probably because you killed the yeast with hot water. So just double check with your finger, make sure that is warm to the touch. And we're using 1.5 cups of water. Bless you, I heard that, Steve. So also, I just want to mention, for those of you baking along today, we're not going to be able to finish this because of the rise time, but certainly let us know how this turns out later on when it finishes up. But I wanted to point that out so you guys know. And I've kind of speeded a couple of the processes along just to keep us within the hour time limit here. So I'm just going to take our whisk. And what's neat about it, it's basically just 3 different inner coils. And what's nice is, like a whisk, typically you have all those things to clean off of there, but this somehow makes everything just combine super easily. I was honestly a little skeptical because I told you guys from the get-go, I'm a very simple baker cook because I don't like a lot of stuff. I don't feel like we need a bunch of gadgets and things in the kitchen, but that's just my personal preference. And so I was a little hesitant, but I had heard a lot about this thing. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. If Tina says, and I know Tina loves being in the kitchen, I was like, okay, Tina says so, then I'm going to give it a shot. So it was super fun. I think someone piped in here. Oh, Tina shared it. So let's see. Yeah, the scraper and the lame with the blades for scoring bread came with it. So that was an actual bonus. I forgot to mention that. And so someone had asked about the measurement for the packet of yeast. So a packet of yeast is typically 2 teaspoons and 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. And so that's what we're using. I shared with you guys last week, I use Red Star yeast typically for mine, but you can use Fleischmann's as well. And so we have our yeast in here, our warm water, and our sugar. And so our yeast is dissolving because of that warm water. So now we're just going to add in 1 cup of flour. And then we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of salt. And I shared last week, it's really important the order with bread, that you never put salt on top of yeast, because salt can also kill yeast as well. And so it's either hot water or salt. And so we just put that in last, and we're going to stir this up until it's combined. And we stay pretty light-handed with this particular dough. So we just combine it a little bit. And so now we're going to add in, I put on the recipe 2+ cups of flour. And, oh, sorry, someone asked about how much sugar. So someone put in about the yeast was 2 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. And we used 1/4 of a cup of sugar and 1/4 of a cup of olive oil. and then 1.5 cups of warm water. So you guys just keep telling me you are, oh, and how much salt? We use 2 teaspoons of salt. And so you feel free, you can use the chat, that's perfectly fine. Feel free to unmute and just ask me out loud too. It's up to you guys to ask questions. Feel free as we go. If I'm going too fast, certainly stop me and I'll try to repeat myself so I'm not going too fast. And you guys can keep me on track too. So we added in 1 cup of flour. Let me make sure that, yeah. And so now we're ready for the 2 more cups of flour. And so like I was saying, in the recipe, I put 2+ cups because we're going to be kneading this. And that's something that you're going to have to eyeball with additional flour. And so I'll show you that part. We'll add in another cup here. And just when you're adding in these 2 cups of flour, just do it in 1 cup increments. The flour that they work with is different. And so you may not need as much. It's going to be a wet dough to start out with. Here's our 2nd cup of flour. And what's neat about this dough hook or whisk is everything combines really simply and just literally falls right through as you mix. So I was surprised, but it's definitely going to stay in my staples for sure. And so like I told you guys last week, as you start to mix a flour yeast combination together, literally it will pull away from the sides of the bowl. So that's kind of nice. And that's all we did, is just stir that together, sort of like last week's when we created that raggy dough. And we're going to set this off to the side and grab some flour. And I just use my hand and sprinkle it out on your counter. And then we'll just take the bowl and use our whisk and put it right out onto the counter. And so what you're going to see is that it is a wet dough, like I mentioned. And you know, with focaccia, it is a wetter dough than pizza dough. You don't want it to be dry. And what's so fun is that as you start to work with different doughs, you can really tell the texture of how it's going to turn out just by the water content alone. And so err on the side of caution with this recipe, and less is more with the flour. And so I'm just going to reach in for a handful, and we're going to sprinkle it over the top just a little bit so there's a light dusting. And then I just put some on my hands. And last week I started to show you how you fold to start working with a dough. And that's a 4-step dough, like it's a circle. So you fold from the top in on each side. So I showed you that last week to kind of form it into a ball. And kneading is the exact same way. So we think of it like a circle. And again, this dough is sticky. So with every turn, I'm just going to give a little bit more flour. And this is going to be a tactile method here because you're going to go just by touch. And that's the fun part, is that it's really by touch. So we fold it in the one side, we turn it, fold in side number 2. And I felt when I lifted that my fingers were sticky. And so I'm just going to take another light dusting of flour and sprinkle it, and then turn it for my 3rd and come in, and then go to your 4th side. And so you think of it like a wheel, and in 4 parts. So we have our top 1, 2, 3, 4. So we folded that side in, we'll turn it, and we're doing the same thing. And what I'm feeling for as I push is it adhering to my hands? And so I felt the stickiness there. So I'm just going to put a little bit on my hands here and do the same thing. Turn it and press down. I hope this makes sense to all of you guys who are watching. And sometimes, you know, when it becomes so easy, like I can do it without looking because, you know, you're used to flipping it. And so as I pushed there, as I came up from the dough, I felt the tackiness of the dough. So that's my clue. Just put a little bit more flour. And again, it's not a lot. It's just a sprinkling. And so let's see. Someone said folding the dough works really well. Thank you. I was making dinner rolls recently, and I usually would just mash the dough over and over, but the methodical folding made all the difference. It really does make a big difference. You're not going to be overworking the dough at all when you do it this way, and you're looking just to that point where it's no longer sticky. And we've only done this a few rounds, as you can tell, and the dough starts to become super smooth, as you guys can see. So what you want to do is dust off. A lot of people forget this step, or they don't tell you in a recipe. Dust off the top when you flip it over. So it's on the back side there, right? So I lifted it up and then dust off all that extra flour because we don't need it. And just by holding onto the dough, I can tell it's no longer, it's just maybe slightly sticky, but not tacky at all. So like it's not clinging to my hands. So just brush all that dough off. I'm going to set it back down here because our next step is once it's in that smooth shape is you need another bowl. So in the recipe, I said a large bowl. So grab that large bowl and you want to oil it up with olive oil. That's the fun thing about focaccia. You're going to use a fair amount of olive oil. So douse some, and I don't give a measurement for the oil typically. You can put as much as little in here as you want. It's not really going to hurt focaccia at all. So as you guys can see, I just douse this around. I like working with, I have these little bottles for olive oil just because it has a really tiny top, hole on the top. And so you're not, throwing out a bunch of olive oil. And 9 times out of 10, if I use my big container, it plops out everywhere. And this just seems to work a little bit easier. And I just have to clean this up when I'm done here.
Elayne?
Yeah, John.
I'm gonna have to do this off the recipe later. Mine won't go into a ball. I must have got the quantities wrong when I put it in the bowl in the first place. Mine's just staying a wet mess.
Okay, well that's okay.
Yeah.
It's still in the bowl.
Nope, on the counter.
Okay.
If I turn on video, you might be able to see it.
Yes, so excellent that you said this, John. You use the perfect word is that your dough is wet. So what that means to you in making this is all you need is to add a little bit more flour into it. So sprinkle the top with flour, John, and you're more than welcome. Is your video on right now?
Yeah, hang on. I'm going to turn off the virtual background.
Let's see if I can see you here.
Yeah, there.
Yeah. That's a great description. So sprinkle the top with flour.
Yep. Yeah, I had so much dough on my hands, I couldn't get to the flour very well.
Okay, and the only trick to that is then put some flour on your hands.
Yeah, I've done that.
Okay. Keep adding. So you have flour, so go to the edge. Yep, fold it in. And with every fold, as you press down with the palms of your hand, if it feels sticky, sprinkle a little bit more flour.
And I'm just trying to keep dough out of my flour container.
Yeah,
Go ahead. You don't have to stay with this. I'll either get it this time or I'll do it off the recipe.
Keep going. If it's wet, that means you just have to add flour. So you're doing great.
Yeah.
And if you still get stuck in a second, just holler and I'll look back at where you end up there. Okay, so we're back. We oiled our bowl. So you just take your oil all the way around here on your bowl. So all sides are covered. And then you're going to drop it with the seam side down into your bowl. And then you're going to flip it over. I usually spin it once and it's getting all the olive oil all over the dough. And then you just flip it right back over. It's going to be nice and shiny with the oil there. And then you're going to go grab some plastic wrap. I'll go do that real quick. and put some plastic wrap over the top of it, and that keeps it nice and moist. I heard John laughing. So are you still
Yeah.
starting your dough?
No, no, it's getting there. Maybe.
Yeah, so the recipe at the start was the 1 cup in the mixture with the yeast and the sugar, then to add 2 more cups. So I'm not sure if that happened.
I added 1 more cup.
1 more cup. Okay.
Yeah, so it's getting there by adding it now. And it's probably going to be overworked.
It's okay though.
Yeah.
It might be a little tough.
I'd mute it, but my hands are all filled with dough. So if you want to mute me, you can do that.
But think of wet as that just means more flour. As it starts to dry out, that's when you have to worry about it being tough. And John, what you can do is let your dough rise longer, and that will help relax the gluten that's in the flour. Let's see, someone just asked me, okay, so let me finish this up and I will check on the chat here in just a second. So we put the plastic wrap on top. We're gonna let this rise for about an hour. It's gonna double. And so I started one just about an hour ago, and I'll show you what it should look like. But give me just a second because I'm gonna wash my hands up to get this flour off, and I will bring that the risen dough back and we'll clean this up. Actually, let me start to clean this up and then I can wash my hands up. All right, so just give me 1 second while I go wash my hands here. Someone in the chat had asked me what kind of olive oil that I use, the brand. I use Costco's, this is organic extra virgin olive oil. So for any of you who want to give that a shot, I've had really good luck with it. And let's see what the other one was. Yes, extra virgin olive oil. So let me hold that up if you guys want to look at it, the overhead camera, so you can at least see it, the label on there. Kirkland's organic extra virgin olive oil. It's super consistent in flavor. And so, yeah, like I said, I've had good luck with it. So I hope you guys try it. And so this dough has risen for an hour. So you can see the difference between our starter dough here and how it's doubled in size. So that is our magic clue. And, you know, an hour is a good amount for this particular recipe.
You're just doing that room temperature. I have a dough rising on my stove or something.
You can proof it in your oven if you like. I typically do it in a warm room. And so I've shared before that a south facing room is typically the warmest room in your house. And I've had really good luck. Just try to keep it away from anywhere that's has a draft, because that can the rise of it. But you can certainly proof it in your oven as well. That works on a low.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to do is when this dough is finished rising, you're going to want to grab a baking sheet. Here's mine. And today I'm not using parchment paper. You guys will be happy to know. So just some nonstick cooking spray. You want to spray on your baking sheet. For those of you new to this week, I typically use parchment in every single recipe, but today we're not. But we sprayed that with nonstick cookie spray. If you want to, you can certainly use olive oil to coat every corner and nook and cranny of this baking sheet. I just typically use the non-stick cooking spray for this. You'll also want to go ahead and preheat your oven. We're going to have another rise of about 30 minutes here in just a second. And I just want to remind you that 375 is going to be where your oven is going to need to be for this recipe. Oh, that's a great idea. Someone just said, Janet said, my mom puts the bowl on a heating pad set on low. That's a very good idea. And then let's see. I proof in the oven. My eyesight must be getting worse here. I proof in the oven, preheated at 190 that has been turned off. Yep, that works as well. And I put mine in a water bed. Yes, that all of those methods work. Yeah, so isn't that interesting how every single person does it a different way? And, you know, my way doesn't mean it's the right way at all. There's lots of different ways to do it. So it's perfect. Whatever works for you, go with that. That's the fun part of learning all these little tried and true tricks of this. So what we're going to do is take this dough out of here and press it into our greased cookie sheet. So you just lift it up and set it right in the center, just like this. And it's going to be a rectangle-ish. I don't know if that's even a word. But what I like to do is put it in the center and then start in the center of it. And you're going to press out. And you just want to stay even. And we're heading for the corners. And again, start in the center and then pull down to the corners. And what you're going to see is it's going to want to pull away from the sides of the baking sheet. And that's okay. That means that all the gluten hasn't quite relaxed out of the dough yet. And that's why we're going to have a second rise to this. And it glides really, really easily on the pan. And it's fun to touch because it's super soft. You can feel the softness in it. And you can feel that it's a little wet. And you'll see these corners here where it kind of, you get it to the corner and then it shrinks back and then you can keep going. But what will happen is after we let it rise for 30 minutes, then you'll see, I'll show you, you'll see how it'll actually stay in the corner. And that's because all the gluten has relaxed. All right, so we're not going to play with it too much longer here. There we go. It's pretty close right now to the edges. And I'll just fix the corners when the 30-minute rise is finished. So once you get this done, grab another sheet of plastic wrap and put it over the top. So I'm going to grab some here. Oops. Thank you. And it's really important, especially for those of you who are here in Colorado with us, to make sure that you cover it, because if you don't, it will dry out. All right, so we're going to let it rest for 30 minutes and let it rise. And, you know, I'm going to cheat a little bit with our time. We'll see. It's not going to take us 30 minutes to chop the stuff for on top, but we'll still get an idea. It will work the same way, but I highly recommend the 30-minute the second rise time. Let's go off to the side. And now the fun part are the toppings. So this is where you guys get to be creative. It's sort of up to you what you want to add to the top. And let me just, I see another question pop up. So let me just see that. What size of baking sheet. It's a standard size baking sheet, cookie sheet that you would use, standard size. Off the top of my head, I can't think what the standard size is in dimensions. But a regular cookie sheet, just make sure that it's a rimmed baking sheet that has edges around the sides. So let me just show you. So it has the edge here. And so Janet just asked, would fresh basil on top be okay? Absolutely. And this is actually the fun part because you can have fun with what you put on it. Today, I chose to just stick with straight herbs. And I've talked about it. I talked about it during the rosemary dinner roll class, how much I love fresh herbs. They're life-changing, I swear. You know, they make you happy when you work with them. The smell, it's aromatherapy as far as I'm concerned when you make focaccia, because you're dealing with garlic and fresh herbs. And then if you want to get fancy with adding vegetables on top, and as Patty had mentioned, there's a big thing on the internet where they do food art on focaccia, where you make flowers with mini bell peppers and you just put them in a circle, and then you can put stems of, maybe I'll do that when I have some mini bell peppers in my fridge, so maybe I'll add that in when we get to that part of it, just to give you guys an idea, because instead of me saying it, it might be better to be visual. So we're gonna start off with lots of garlic. In the recipe, I said 2 to 3 cloves of garlic, and it depends on your size. I like garlic. I don't know about you guys. And so I'm looking for a bigger clove of garlic. So I typically will use 3 larger cloves, or maybe even 4 if they're smaller. So I'm probably going to go with that amount here. And I like doing the slides so you guys can see. A lot of people hate messing with garlic. They like to buy the jarred. It's not the same. If you use jarred garlic, much better to use fresh, and this stuff lasts forever. And a trick is you can either use the palm of your hand and press down like this, and it'll flatten it like this. Or you can take your knife, big chef's knife, and do the exact same thing and just press down until it's completely flat. And then your peel pops literally right off. So it's kind of nice. And you're not like scraping with your nail trying to peel that skin off. Again, I think I answered your question about using fresh basil. Yes.
Elayne?
Yeah.
You can also use one of these. It's a rubber tube.
Yes, and you roll those?
You just roll it on the counter and all the leaves come off.
Yep, that's a great tip too, as well. You know, when I first started out cooking, I started to have a lot of gadgets, and then over time, just your drawers get full of stuff. And then I realized, you know, I just pared down over the years, and a knife, you know, does the trick too. But, you know, all those things certainly help with it if you don't want that smell on your hands. But I find that I really don't get the smell on my hands. Are we still there? I saw us gray out. Can you guys see me okay?
Yep,
Okay,
you're still
perfect.
there.
Big red X come up, so hopefully we're okay. So typically I'm not really touching the garlic. Like I showed you guys with the technique of chopping, is you hold down the tip of your chef's knife, a big knife that you may have, or a little one, whichever you have, and then you're just going back and forth. Literally back and forth, and it smells so good. Whoever's taking along here, doesn't it smell good? We just keep going back and forth, and we're just mincing this into fine little pieces. There we go. You can have a little bit bigger ones too if you want. The size of how you do it. It's sort of up to you. A lot of people don't want big chunks of garlic. There we go. And so I am just going to put this on the side here for now. And we're just going to continue on with the rest of this. So last week, we talked about the fact that bread requires some patience. And I feel like this week I may be testing your patience again, because you have to let it rise for an hour, then another half hour, you have to let it rise again. So that patience process is coming into play. But if you've ever worked with fresh herbs, they require patience too, because you have to strip them off of the stems. And so I'm going to grab a big thing of rosemary. And we used rosemary a few weeks ago with those quick rosemary dinner rolls. So if you just grab the top and pull down, you can pretty much strip the stem off. And you guys can pile up these stems and throw them into some water and boil them with some vegetables for a start of a vegetable stock. Is a great use for them. But the reason I said that about patience is, we're going to get down to time here in a second, and it's super tiny. I think it's a process that it makes you present in what you're doing. You have to actually watch what you're doing to get these off, to get the leaves off. And I think it's just a fun experience in the kitchen where you've taken the time to set everything up. I always say in the recipe, set everything out. I put my little herbs in jars. I think of herbs in the wintertime like flowers. We don't have a lot of fresh flowers or bright things, around in the wintertime. And it's fun to have fresh herbs around, to use in lieu of flowers, so to speak. Just makes you happy. And
Elayne,
yeah,
as a possible assistance as you start the class, if we could do mise en place right then, because then I'll know how much flour I'm going to need. I'll get each piece all set up.
yeah.
Because as it is, I'm scrambling a little bit to go find, okay, how many teaspoons of that do I need?
Yeah, we can certainly do that, John. That's a great tip. I appreciate that. And you guys tell me, what will help you guys who are baking along, especially what I can do to help assist in that. And so we can certainly do that, John. So thank you for that. So I am aiming for, in the recipe, I put 1 to 2 tablespoons. I tend to err on the side of 2 tablespoons with the fresh herbs. What's nice is you can buy these for just a couple of dollars now in the store, which is great. And so the next one I'm grabbing is oregano. It works the exact same way. You strip it, grab it at the top and pull your 2 fingers down and strip it. But what's nice is these can last 3 to 4 weeks in your refrigerator. A tip that I would have in storing them in your refrigerator, put them in your door, because that's the warmest part of your fridge. And if they get too cold, that's when they start to brown up. But these will last a long time. You'd actually be surprised. And, you'll find that you'll tend to use fresh herbs over dried a lot of times because of it. But it's great adding, I put herbs in pretty much everything. I told you guys about my love for my herb garden. Very low maintenance. Don't have to do a thing to it. Yeah, it's super easy, you guys. Just grabbing the top and pull down here. And this is what I meant by the patience thing. You just have to take your time to do this part of it. And you'll see lots of people tell you different tricks, feed them through a colander or different things. And I just think it's extra gadgets that you you know, if you're going to take the time to do this, then just be present with what you're doing. We don't have to, you know, speed through everything in our lives. I think it's good to take our time sometimes and just enjoy the process, enjoy the smells, and enjoy how pretty it is. So now we are moving on to our time. And if everyone, or if anyone has ever had to destem thyme, it's a really hardy herb and woody, I would say. But sometimes with the variety that you pick up in the store, sometimes there's stems flying everywhere. And it's a little bit more tedious to get the leaves off the stem. Not bad. I remember several years ago having this, I called it a share party, and I made these thyme cookies, and I had to go through bushels and bushels of thyme. So my fingers were like raw to the bone. So I think of that every time I'm going to destem thyme and get it off of the leaves here. But you can see on this one, it's really bushy at the top. And so sometimes you just have to look down in your pile and pull out some of these bigger stems because they're not as fun to bite into. We're aiming for just the leaves, if at all possible. So hopefully this is making sense. Let me see if having the right recipe. Having the recipe along with the list of needed ingredients and kitchen supplies would help me a lot. Absolutely. Yes, I will certainly do that, you guys. And Pat, thank you for that comment. That is the fun part because, you know, as long as you guys are willing to voice what could make it better, that helps me. And I want to help you guys. I always tell you guys the whole goal of these is to make you a success and for you to feel like you're comfortable in the kitchen. We don't want you running around feeling ragged like John was saying. I'm trying to find things. And so it's such a good point that he brought up. You know, I do it before class, so why shouldn't you guys? So it's something that just hadn't crossed my mind, but makes complete sense. So I'm really happy that he brought that up. And so I'm still going to town here on this. The smell is absolutely incredible. Janet, about your basil, you can either, if you have small leaves, you can put whole basil on there if you want, or you can slice it up as well. So you have thinner slices of basil if you want. And, you know, another thing, like I said, it's up to your imagination what kind of herbs you want to use. If you don't have fresh on hand, certainly you can use dried. And so I always do a 1-to-3 ratio for the most part for dried spices. But you know, a lot of people will say 1 teaspoon of the dried. I never think that that's enough flavor. So it's kind of your preference of how flavorful you want something. There we go. We're getting there. So maybe with as slow as I'm going here, maybe that 30 minutes will be up. I think we had another question come in. And John said you want 1 tablespoon of each spice, right? Yeah, you can do a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons. It's up to you. I always do more. I do the 2 tablespoons, but I put a range, you know, depending on what you have on hand. I don't want you to get too caught up with the number. You'll see when we go to sprinkle it out onto the dough how much you want on each area of it. And I typically just eyeball it. And so I'll grab 3 stems here and do this. And I probably should have followed my recipe a little better because I just looked to the right and I saw that my balsamic vinegar is over here. And I will be doing that here in a second too, is mixing up our olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Just gonna clean this up a little bit. And just remember when you're looking at this time to go ahead and look down and pull out any of those longer stems that you may have gotten in there. I think we're pretty good. Let's see, there's one right there. Kind of hard to see. All right. I might do just a couple of more here. I realized that I made it this last week. And, you know, it was funny because I typically, gosh, my kids were saying how much they loved it. And they're like, why don't you make this more? And I thought, I don't know why I don't make it more. I probably only make it once every couple of years. I kind of forget about it, how much we like it. But I told them not to worry because we're going to have 3 today. So they're going to have plenty. All right. So I've got my 3 big piles here. Hopefully everyone is caught up and doing okay. Let's see what. Yeah, so Tina answered 2 tablespoons of each herb. 1 to 2 tablespoons is up to you guys. Maybe they should learn to make it. Yes, actually they can make this. And so that's been the fun thing over the years, is because I have invited my kids into the kitchen to be a part of it. They can make a lot of things. They choose not to, but they can. And so it was super fun at the beginning of COVID. In our family, we did this meal challenge, and we basically drew out of a hat a night of the week. And I was thrilled. I didn't have to prepare meals. And so we each had a night where we had to prepare a meal, and we rated each other on presentation and taste and creativity. We had the best time. I think we did it 3 weeks in a row. I put it up on the blog to share what we made, but we had the best time. And I realized, okay, they did absorb, you know, over the years, a lot of the cooking that we've done in the house. And they did it all on their own. So I was super proud of them. It was so fun. Okay, so I skipped over this step before messing with the herbs. But what you'll need to do is grab a tablespoon of olive oil, and then we're using balsamic vinegar. So we're going to use a tablespoon of each and just add it to a small bowl. And like I told you guys, the hole on top of this little spout is pretty tiny. It keeps me from putting too much olive oil on things, is why I have it. So a whole tablespoon. Put that over there. Filling it everywhere as I go, so I'll just wipe up a little bit. And then we're going to use another tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. And I can show you guys, this one is, it's called Trader Giada's, like Trader Joe's, except in Italian. And it's an aged balsamic vinegar. I love it. It's, if you guys have tried balsamic vinegar, it's super sweet. It's great just alone on a salad. You just douse a little bit here and there. But any kind of balsamic is usually super tasty. So if you guys do try that, it's yummy. So you're just combining the balsamic vinegar, so a tablespoon of balsamic and a tablespoon of olive oil, and I'm dribbling it everywhere. We're going to set that off to the side here. And so by the time you get done with, you know, chopping your garlic and your herbs, you're going to be pretty close to that 30-minute mark of letting it rise. I don't think we've gone a full 30 minutes yet. But I want to show you just after, I'm not even sure how many minutes it's been, but I'll show you in the corners here. So when you push it back up to the edge, if it springs back like this, it means you should let it go a little bit longer. But if it goes nice and smoothly into that corner and doesn't move, then you are good to go. So let's see, I think we had another question. What is the glass thing called that you have your olive oil in available at Amazon? Probably. What would this be called? That is a good question. I got these at Walmart, I believe. Just in the salad dressing section, they're glass bottles. Yeah, I can't think. I mean, I've had these for a really long time, but I'm pretty sure, you know, Walmart, Amazon. It comes in a set, so I have my balsamic. It was a two set, so it's vinegar and olive oil. So maybe you could Google something like that, and it would come up. But I have my balsamic vinegar in the other one, and so I just keep them, and I can douse it whenever I need it.
I think Amazon just calls them an olive oil dispenser.
Okay, yeah. And cruet is what Janet said. Yep, that's a good word for it too.
I Googled olive oil shaker and a whole bunch of things came up.
Yeah, look for the set. You found it? Okay, the vinegar and olive oil. Yeah, cruet. Yeah, Susan said Trader Joe's is totally my favorite store. So glad they finally came to Colorado. Yeah, I am too. Okay, so we have our garlic here. I'm going to still work on getting these to the corners. Oh, there we go. It's getting closer. There we go. Now it's stuck. Okay, so a lot of you probably know when you've had focaccia, you see that there's dimples in it. And it's super fun. You take your fingers as if you're playing the piano. And the reason why you dimple it is so you're getting out all the extra air that's in the dough. Otherwise, you'll get bubbles. And so I'm basically just pretend you're playing the piano here and go back and forth and dimple that dough up. And if you see a pocket where there was a bubble, go ahead and pop that. And that's the whole point of doing this. Just dimple it down. And for you guys, it'll look just a little bit differently because you'll have let it rise the full half hour. But this is pretty close. But the whole point of it is just to get that air out of the dough is why we dimple it with our fingers. So what we'll do now is grab that vinegar and olive oil mixture. You can brush it across. If you have a pastry brush, it's up to you. Let me look. I see we have a question. Do we now mince the herbs after stripping them from the stems? I actually don't mince the herbs. I leave them as whole leaves for this particular recipe. So you do not have to chop them up. The basil you can strip if you want. And with basil, I don't have any on hand, but typically put them on top and roll them and then slice them. It's a chiffonade technique, and it puts them into slices if you want, instead of the whole leaves.
Thank you. Can you place it here for mommy? Right, the last one.
Just drizzle your olive oil and vinegar mixture across, or you can brush it across. It's up to you. And don't worry if you have a big dollop. We can take the back of the spoon here in a second. So this is a total of 2 tablespoons together is 1 tablespoon of olive oil and 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. And you know, if you are using roasted veggies or caramelized onions, it's fun to put them in the vinegar and olive oil mixture and toss them around and then spread it out. And so you can use the back of your spoon if you want, if you feel like there's some pockets. But those pockets are good because these herbs will get trapped down into all those little dimples. So I'm going to start with the garlic. And think of this dough, you know, we talked maybe, I think I mentioned it last week. I feel like cooking, it truly is an art form, and you can think of it as an art form. And think of this dough as a blank canvas. I've splattered it now with a base of different, you know, a dark color. And now I'm going to start, you know, adding in just sprinkling of the minced garlic. So I think this is the first time I'm physically touching the garlic. But if you don't want it on your hands, you can certainly use a spoon to spread it around. And then I'm going to save this corner right here, and I will go grab my mini bell peppers here in just a second. I hope they're still in there. My boys haven't eaten them, but we'll save that corner for that. And so I'll grab the rosemary, and you're just sprinkling it across the dough. And I swear it just makes you happy, you know, looking at the color pops of all this, and it really is your artwork. And so now I'm going to take the oregano and spread that across. It smells amazing with the balsamic. And, you know, when you touch the leaves of herbs, it's, you know, basically called muddling. It releases the oils. And that's something that you can do as you sprinkle it, is just squeeze your fingers together and it releases the oils, and the smell gets even better and better as you mess with it. And if you see you have a big chunk of leaves together, you can always separate them out like I'm doing. And so now I'll grab my thyme. I feel like, doesn't it get prettier and prettier with each layer? And I'm basically just going into all the like blank spots that are on here and sprinkling the thyme in. And I'll go ahead and sprinkle some on this corner that we're going to work with here in a second. Look how pretty that looks. Super colorful. So let me go grab those mini bell peppers and I'll show you. Well, I spoke too soon. The bell peppers are not in my fridge, so they were eaten, but I have some mini grape tomatoes here and I can show you. But if you use a mini bell pepper for this, if you are slicing them, what's pretty about a mini bell pepper is it looks like it's got a flower shape to it. So it's super pretty. If I'm working with tomatoes and any kind of pizza dough or focaccia, I always blot it with a paper towel. It takes out all that extra juice. And I typically will put them all out on a paper towel and just press down with my hands and push out all that extra juice. But you can take these slices. Let me take all the slices up here right on this paper towel. My other ones weren't as pretty shaped, so I was looking for a prettier shape to show you guys. If you're gonna play with your food, that's really what this is. And the seed, the nice thing about this is the seeds will adhere to your paper towel too. That one's not as pretty either, so let me keep going. I like the center ones a little bit better. So let me take it off the end. See if I can get a prettier one. And then you can basically just form it into a shape of a circle. Let's see, that one's a little bit bigger. So it gives you the idea. And then you can take, for example, our thyme over here. And if you think of a flower, and if we didn't have all these other leaves here, I probably should have left it blank, but you can put it right there into the center. And if you can imagine without all the other herbs around, what it would look like on here. And so it's super cute and fun. And so you can certainly play. And what's fun about mini bell peppers is they have orange and red and yellow. I have some yellow tomatoes in here, so I can make up, another one beside it. And you can do that all around. And so you can have a lot of fun with that. So I'll just take these off of here for now. And so we have our oven preheated on 375. And we're going to put this in there for 20 minutes is usually the magic ticket for getting it nice and golden. If it's not quite golden at 20 minutes, you can let it go another 5 minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and pop this in here. And I see that it is 2 o'clock already, so we are almost done, you guys. Thanks for sticking with me here. Here's the one I made up yesterday. Let me see who asked a question here. Can you use the dough to make a deep dish pizza? You absolutely can use that. It'll be fluffier. That's really the only difference between this and pizza dough. Pizza dough uses less yeast. This will just be thick. It's usually 3/4 of an inch thick. And what about topping it with cheese? Absolutely. Parmesan cheese is a great one to add to it, or whatever your favorite kind of cheese is. And it was funny, as I was just grabbing this, I realized that my spatula, I told you guys I'm really protective of my pans and I don't like to use metal on them. And so I grabbed my dough scraper there. So you can see what it looks like. This is nice and golden. It's super pretty. And I'll just show you for a second. Let me just clean this up. And Focaccia, you can use it in different ways. It's sort of up to you. Brush this all off here real quick. Make it easier for you guys to see. Dragging everything everywhere. There we go. That's the fun part, that these are live. You guys can see everything and the mess that I make along the way. But Focaccia, as I was saying, you can, slice it into squares if you want. You can slice it into triangles and serve it this way. Typically, it's a dipping bread, and so you can take more balsamic vinegar and just put it in a small bowl. And it's always fun, and if you have kids at home, because they get their own little bowl and they can dip it in, and you just let it soak in on the edge. You can add olive oil to it if you want. I just do the balsamic, and it's amazing, so good with the olive oil and all that stuff on there and the herbs. It's so flavorful, but I typically will serve it along. Tonight we're going to have a salad. So I'm going to serve it alongside a salad. Last week, I made a big pot of tomato soup, and we had it with tomato soup. And you can serve it. A roast chicken it's a great side for roast chicken. Or a lot of people don't think to use this as sandwich bread because it is thick. You can either keep it thick and put some meat and cheese in between there, and you can grill it if you want, or you can slice it in half and build your sandwich. And it's amazing. Probably one of the best sandwiches you'll ever have, just because of all those, the herbs that are infused in the bread. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Let me see. I don't want to keep you guys too long here over. Oh yes, Tina pointed out that dough scraper, it comes in the kit with the Danish whisks that we use. So you get a whole little kit with it. So that was fun to have that. Sparrowhawk has a million kitchen gadgets. Oh, good to know. I have not looked at Sparrowhawk before. Oh, there you go, Tina. A grilled panini. Exactly. These make great paninis. The Focaccia does. Awesome. And Pat said, yum, thanks. So I hope you guys try it. As always, share results with us. We love it when you share on Facebook or Instagram at Sharing Life, Love, and Food, or share with the library. It's so fun. I think you guys are inspiring a lot of folks. We've had a lot of biscotti pictures coming in.
Elayne?
Jennifer has been really active, and she made that Swiss roll that I talked about a few weeks ago, and it turned out perfect for her. So it's super fun to see you guys having successes, and I know you guys are inspiring each other. John, go ahead with your question.
My wife mentioned as she was looking at this list, saying, "Oh, you've been mixing by hand these doughs for weeks now." I've got this Bosch stand mixer over here. She wondered if this was a deep enough paddle. This is the.
Let me look. Let me change my view here so I can see you. That is a dough hook paddle.
Yep. Would that work where you're saying a stand mixer and paddle?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yes.
So I don't have to do it by hand the next time.
You do not. And actually, I try to change it up. You guys know a lot of recipes. In the beginning, I would show you with my mixer. And then this week I did it by hand because I want everyone, I don't want anyone to ever feel like they can't do something by hand completely. You do not need a mixer. I think when you learn by hand, then you understand the dough better and you get the feel of it, like with John, how wet his was, and that's telling him. And it also, if you're using a mixer, then you're using more visual clues. Does it look wet? And you start out when you're making focaccia with a paddle beater to mix it all up and then switch to your dough hook. And because we didn't need a lot for this, just a few rounds, you won't need to knead it much if you use that dough hook. So
smells really good in here.
Doesn't it smell good? I wish I could describe the smell going on, but doesn't it make you happy smelling that?
Yeah, but I've still got another hour till I bake it. I've got all the spices just giving all this aroma.
We're having ziti for dinner tonight.
Victoria, she was so cute during the rosemary dinner roll. She was actually doing the happy dance after she tasted it. And that's what I feel like when you use herbs and things in your recipes, it makes you do the happy dance.
It does.
Let's see. People are commenting. I know some of you have had to go. Oh, Patty, thank you for saying that. That's sweet. Focaccia. Great, Tracy. I can't wait for you to try it. Kareem, awesome. Let's see. Is there only difference with this, the salt and water? Yes, that would be the difference is the salt and water, but I don't know what the Ligurian, what, can you tell me more about that, Deb?
Someone showed me a Ligurian Focaccia that is from the south of France, the area, a particular area, and you put salt water all over it.
So what my guess is that would make the crust harder.
Ah, okay.
Why you would do that, you get more of a crust type to it with the salt water added to the top. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to look that up and try it.
Okay.
That's fun.
Ah, Ligurian Focaccia. There's a link.
Oh, there we go. Excellent.
Super.
Thanks, Melissa. I know, I want to click, let me click on that so it's open for after class so I can look at that. That's fun. This is the best part about it. I love when you guys pitch in because we all learn something, and that's the beauty of sharing with each other.
Huh.
I see Tina typing, yes, it's crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. Okay. That's great to know. And that's, you know, the fun thing about this focaccia, because we didn't over knead it or overwork it, it's super, super pillowy and soft. I don't even know if you guys can see or if that translates on camera or not, at how soft it is, but I can press, you know, with my fingers and it just feels like a pillow and it pops right back up. And so it's super soft, it's super delicious. So I hope you guys try it. And like Patty said last week, I hope I'm not unleashing a bread monster for all of you guys, but it is fun to try. And like I said, I sort of forgot, you know, about focaccia. I don't make it all that often anymore. It's just a, you know, a couple of times a year or once every couple of years kind of thing. But it's an easy, as you guys saw, a fairly easy recipe as long as you guys give yourself some time to make it. Next week, someone correct me, but I think we are making scones. Yeah, that was maple scones is on the docket for next week. So I can't wait to see you guys again next week. And I enjoy talking with you guys every week. And it makes my Monday seeing you guys and being a part of this. So I hope you guys all have a great week. And we'll see you next week.
Hey, I'm just looking at the list for the maple scones. Do we need the heavy cream? That's something I don't normally have.
You can use, do you have whole milk or what kind of milk
Sure.
do you
Yeah. So whole milk could be used in place of the heavy cream.
It can, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, the only difference is the fat content. So that's great.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah,
See you next
absolutely.
week.
We'll see you next week.
Quick question.
Yeah, stick around if anyone has any questions.
Okay. If you can't use milk, can you use extra butter and almond milk or something?
You can, the flavor profile is
Okay.
different with almond milk. So I would actually recommend water.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Is it possible to use maple syrup instead of maple extract? You sure can use maple syrup. The only difference is going to be the intensity of the maple flavor. It's just going to make it a little bit more of a lighter flavor is all. But that works. And I have done that many of times. See if there's any other questions from anyone. Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. See, that's Kate. Thanks for joining, Kate. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Camille. Thanks, Hazel. Thanks, Elayne, my namesake there, and Ian. You know, you guys are the duo that I think the mom and son always baking. That's so fun. Oh, so Hazel said that she needs the Danish dough whisk.
Yeah, I'm going back to find the
Oh,
link
awesome.
now.
Thank you so much for doing that. We certainly can, Hazel. Find it. There we go. So Hazel, Melissa just posted that for us. So perfect. Were you able to get that, Hazel? Chris, thanks for joining. We'll see you next week.